Hi there guys, Tom Quayle here. Hope you're all doing very well indeed as ever. Today I'm checking out a very cool product, or actually a pair of products from the guys at Xsonic. Now these guys got in touch with me and asked me if I wanted to check out their Xtone Pro and Xtone audio interfaces, designed very much for guitar players. And there's a very specific reason why I jumped at this opportunity, because I don't get time to shoot a lot of videos, but this really intrigued me. And it's primarily because recently I was at the NAMM show in LA, and I had a gig. Literally the day I got back, I had to fly to Germany and do a gig with Martin Miller. And we haven't played the tunes for a long time, so I needed to practice while I was in LA. That meant I needed a very small rig that I could take with me that would allow me to practice with good, inspiring tone, and also be able to listen to backing tracks or the videos that we've done before to learn the arrangements. And the Xtone Pro and the Xtone, if I just grab the Xtone, which is even smaller, you can see that there. These are super quality, pro level audio interfaces that can record up to 192 kilohertz, which is totally insane for a device like this size. It wasn't that long ago that 192 kilohertz was out of the range of even high-end interfaces. So for something this small to be able to do that in this form factor is pretty cool. So we're going to focus primarily on the Xtone Pro, and then when we've looked at this, I'll just tell you what the differences are between the Xtone and the Xtone Pro. This was the one I took with me to LA. And as you can see, it's a pedal format audio interface designed for guitar players. But audio interfaces in the past that I've seen that have been designed for guitar players tend to have had quite a few kind of flaws in my mind. In particular, the lack of XLR inputs for doing pro level recording with microphones, especially without phantom power. And the ability to control whatever plugin you're using from the device itself. Because most of us are used to audio interfaces which are just kind of a rack mount unit. Like I've got a PreSonus Studio 192 behind me, it's just a 1U rack unit with preamps on there. They do a great job, but they're not that useful for guitar players other than being able to get sound directly into your computer. Well, this changes the game completely. Trust me when I say you could gig with just this and an iPad, and you would be good to go, or even an iPhone or an Android device. It's that good in terms of its quality. Basically, Xsonic have designed this to have the lowest latency possible from a device like this, a USB 2 device. So this Xtone Pro that I've got here is completely bus powered from my computer here. And if you're running Mac, iOS or Android, it's completely what we call class compliant, so there's no drivers that need to be installed at all. Now that means you're going to get super low latency because you're addressing the hardware natively with the operating system. Now in Windows, you do need to install a driver. Now I'm using Windows here. It's always us Windows guys that get the short end of the stick, if you like, or the straw. But there does need to be a driver installed. And also, at this point, I should point out that Xsonic haven't actually released their own ASIO driver that's native to this device. So you will be using the ASIO for All driver. And that does mean that as a Windows user, you get slightly higher latency than you would with a Mac, iOS or Android device if you're using something like Bias, for instance, or GarageBand or Logic on a Mac. However, let me put it this way. I've got a latency here of 2.4 milliseconds with this device at 44.1 kilohertz, okay? The only downside for Windows users, if you're running at 192 kilohertz with the ASIO for All driver, you're gonna see lots and lots of CPU usage. So when Xsonic get their own ASIO driver out, which I hope they do, you're gonna see the latencies drop even further and the CPU overhead drop even further. But just to demonstrate this, check this out. This is the latency that I've got right now. Now, obviously you guys can't feel it the same as I can, but I can't feel or perceive any latency at all. Now I'm running through the Neural DSP Abassi plugin here, and it sounds great. There's nothing there. It just feels like playing through an amplifier. It's really amazing. And my CPU is not being pushed that much, even though this plugin is pretty heavy on CPU here. I am running a 12-core CPU here, so it's pretty high end. Now, I said it was fully featured. Let's go through the I/O here and let's just see what we've got. So first of all, down on the right-hand side here, as you're looking at it, we've got this in L and in R, so left and right. But there's a little bit more to it than that. The in L is designed as a guitar-specific input. And that means that unlike a lot of interfaces, even if they have high Z inputs where you then need to go and adjust the gain in order to get the optimum gain level to go into some of these virtual amp plugins, this is designed that you don't need to do that. It's just always balanced at the best possible level. The impedance is good for guitar. You don't need to do anything. You just plug in. And if I look at the Abasi plugin, it's just running beautifully in the background with the perfect input level. It's not actually showing at the moment. You guys probably can't see it anyway on screen, but my input level is perfect. It's not clipping, it's just the right level, which is great. We've then got an expression pedal input. Now that can be mapped using a CC MIDI controller or continuous controller in MIDI language that can be mapped to anything within any of the plugins that we're using. So if you're using a digital audio workstation like Logic or Cubase, you can map it to whatever. If you're using a plugin like Bias or Guitar Rig, you can map it to a volume pedal, a wah pedal, you can map it to the preamp gain, you could map it to anything within the plugin, just because it's basically just a CC controller. We've then got one of the pièce de résistance for me for this particular interface. I think this is awesome. You've got a combi jack on here, which is XLR and a standard unbalanced jack. Really high quality as well. And this allows you with the phantom power as well to run any condenser mics or ribbon mics, and the preamp in there is studio grade. It's got up to 50 dB of gain on there as well. So it will actually run ribbon mics as well if you need to do that, which is great because I have a Royer R121 and it's going to sound great through here. If we move on, we've got a 9 volt center negative DC input on here as well. Now you don't need to use that because it's USB bus powered, but you could run that on your pedal board and run the 9 volt without the USB if you wanted to use the MIDI functionality of the foot switches, which we'll get into later. We also have MIDI in and MIDI out, so you can control things like Strymon timelines, any of the Boss kind of products that require MIDI, anything that requires MIDI really, because these send out CC controllers via the MIDI. Headphone socket on here, and that will accept low or high impedance headphones, so no matter what you're running, kind of cheap budget things or super high end, it's going to sound great, especially because the converters are high level in here as well. Power switch, then we've got a balanced XLR out. Now that means that you could run just your iPad, for instance, super low latency, any plugins on your iPad or your iPhone or your Android device, whatever, run that straight out mono front of house. Fantastic. Then run front of house back to the monitors on stage so you can hear yourself. So you could gig with just this and an iPad. That's all you would need. It's absolutely killer. We've then got a pair of left and right unbalanced outs as well, which is what I'm routing to my other audio interface in order that I can record the sound that's coming out of this device, but obviously everything is being processed on here with the Neural DSP plugin. Now, looking at the front panel, we've got a volume control, which does exactly what you'd expect, obviously. Very high quality construction on there. It's got a nice bit of resistance to it. Then we've got our gain control for the input right or the XLR, not for this input, obviously, that doesn't need it. And then we've got some LEDs underneath. We've got a mode LED, which basically indicates that power is on via USB. I'll speak about the other functions of that in a second. We've got our monitoring LED on there, which is allowing you to see when direct hardware monitoring is on. So like a lot of interfaces these days, you can monitor the direct input straight to output with 0 latency if you need to do that, which is very cool. 48 volts phantom power. If we hold down F for phantom, don't think that's quite right, phantom power comes on for our XLR. We've also got a clip indicator, which you just saw light up there. So if we're clipping our input stage here, we can see that too. And then we've got the real killer functionality, which is the 6 foot switches underneath that are very high quality non-latching foot switches that make it look like a pedal, a guitar pedal as opposed to an audio interface. But each of these sends an individual MIDI continuous controller or CC output via the USB or the MIDI out that allows you to map that CC controller to anything within the plugin that you're using, provided it supports MIDI, of course, which Guitar Rig, Bias, the Neural DSP stuff does. A lot of the most common plugins that people would use do. Again, even on the iPad or even on the iOS devices or Android devices, they all support MIDI via USB. So within the Abasi plugin here, you can hear this is my basic tone. I've actually mapped A and B to be preset down and up. I've mapped C to be my delay on or off, F to be my reverb on or off. I've got E and D to be my the pedals before my amplifier. So we've got the pathos and the other one I forget. there's two preamp pedals that are going to run into the front of the amplifier, and I can switch them on and off. So for instance, there's a dry signal, delay, in stereo of course. Turn that off, reverb. There's our beautiful reverb with these Neural DSP plugins, they sound amazing. Okay, so we could also turn the preamp on in the front. I don't need that much gain. And then we've got A and B are going to be our preset up and down. So if I press B here, sorry, that's bouncing around. Maybe you saw that switch in the background. I don't know how much of the screen you can see. Press it again. So you can see it's completely seamless the way that this functions. Now, if 6 switches is not enough for you, well, the Xsonic guys have thought of you too. If you hold down B, now the mode LED has gone blue, you've got a further 6 different CC controllers. Then if you hold down C, it goes red, you've got a further 6 again, so 18 different CC controllers that you can utilize to map to any of the functions within any of these programs, which is super, super cool and makes this a very powerful device indeed. So you can do tap tempo, for instance. You could turn the preamp on or off for, you know, whatever you wanted to do. You could turn a wire on and off. There's so much functionality in here. And the Neural DSP plugin, for instance, the Abassi one, has hundreds of parameters that you can assign to MIDI. It's very easy to do. Same thing with bias, same thing with guitar rig as well, all the common ones. And in fact, Xsonic, the guys have actually in the manual, they've written what the CC controllers are for each of these different buttons that allows you very easily to find that CC controller and assign it to any of the particular functions in the app. So it's very, very cool indeed. And don't forget, of course, that expression pedal and, of course, the killer part, the lowest latency I've experienced from a USB interface, which is very, very cool indeed. So the guys at Xsonic have done a killer job. If I just show you really quickly, here's the Xtone, the standard one. If I just show you that one more time. So this smaller brother to the Xtone Pro, there are some quite big differences, but obviously the killer thing with this is its form factor. It's so small. You've not got the XLR input. You've just got a mono input on here, so really just for guitar. You do have left and right outs, but you don't have the kind of, well, you do actually have the balanced out on there as well. So I was going to say you don't, of course you do. You've got the headphone socket, USB obviously bus powered. You've got the 9-volt center negative DC input and the power switch, but obviously you've got less foot switches. There's no, as far as I can see, direct hardware monitoring on here, and there's certainly no phantom power and no XLR input as well. And I believe that the sound quality on this one in terms of the converters and the signal path is slightly higher grade as well than with this one. Not to say that this is in any way poor at all, it's super high end, but this one is the Pro version, so obviously you'd expect that. There's also no MIDI out on there as well, I don't know if I mentioned that. So if you want something small, go for the Xtone. If you want something fully featured, this is the one I would pick, the Xtone Pro, and the prices are superb on these as well. So, hope you found that useful, guys. As ever, if you click the link in the description below, that'll take you to Xtone's website where you can check out more details on these, and you can also buy them direct from there, which is quite cool as well. Support the manufacturer directly. So check that out. I should also point out, now I've got Tom Quayle t-shirts available as well. If you check out my merch store, you can check out a couple of different designs that we've released. There's this one with the TQM1 X-Ray on there that glows in the dark actually, which is kind of cool. The Tom Quayle logo on there, all sorts of different sizes available, so I'll leave a link to that below as well. And of course you can check out all my lessons too. Okay guys, as I say, hope you enjoyed that. Check out all the details, hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and make sure you hit the bell notification icon to ensure you never miss any more of my videos ever again. Right guys, thanks for watching. My name's Tom Quayle and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.